Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Sophia, your host. We're here in the main prayer hall of the Islamic Information Center, home of Let the Quran Speak. The typhoon in the Philippines killed thousands and left many others homeless and injured. Where is God when disaster strikes? Why does God allow human beings to experience immense suffering and loss? And what responsibility do we bear? What can we do to alleviate the pain and hardship of those affected by the typhoon? We'll be exploring those questions with Dr. Shabir Ally. Brother Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
My pleasure to be on.
Now, Typhoon Haiyan was pretty catastrophic. It was 3 times the size of Hurricane Katrina. So I guess the question to begin is, was a typhoon in God's plan?
In our belief, everything is in God's plan, the good things and the bad things. Of course, one might ask, what does God intend by all of this? And doesn't it seem terrible to say that God, who is known to be good, would be allowing for such a terrible thing to happen?
Yeah, so many people died. People were left stranded, hungry, homeless. So the question is, why would God allow for something like this to take place?
Yes, we would say that God has good reasons that we cannot always fathom, good reasons for doing things, and terrible things happen in our world, but God is in ultimate control of all of these things, and He allows for some bad things to happen, but those bad things are counterbalanced by an abundance of good, and the default situation is that good things are always happening, and then bad things interrupt that flow of continuous good. And when a lot of good is happening, we don't ask, well, why is there so much good? And we don't thank God enough for all of the good things that He has given us. Sometimes the bad things can bring us back to our senses and make us realize that we're not in total control of our affairs in this world. We must continually depend on God, do what we can to be sure, but at the same time, put our faith and our trust, our reliance on God, and try to do what is right to please Him, so that not only will we have good in this life, but ultimate good in the life hereafter.
Don't you think this could seem as like a harsh lesson, especially to those who are suffering, that they have to realize that life is short, that they should rely on God, all of these lessons that you're mentioning, but it seems pretty rough for an individual going through that crisis.
Yes, the solace for that is that there is a hadith in which the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, happy is the case of the believer, because if good things come to him or her, let's say they thank God, and for that they get a reward. But if bad things come their way, they are patient, and for that too they get a reward. It seems to me that this hadith was not meant to limit this only in the case of believers, but more generally, when people suffer in this world, there is a compensation for them in the life hereafter. And those who exercise patience, knowing that there is that compensation, will get even more in reward for the actual expression of or application of patience in a case like this.
I have a question about natural disasters. How do we understand that? Because in the past, people have said, well, God is punishing these people. And we know that in the Quran, in the Bible, we know that God has punished groups of people for things that they've done or haven't done through natural disasters. Is that what happens now still?
We cannot say that in a particular case now that God is punishing people in this way. Although He may use natural disasters to punish people, but we cannot say if in natural disasters then may have a number of other explanations other than to say that God is punishing people.
Okay.
And if something bad happens to us, we may want to ask ourselves, did we do something wrong? So that may be a wake-up call for us. But it seems cruel when disaster strikes someone else for us to sit in a judgment seat and say, well, wait a minute, it may be because you have done something wrong. Rather, we should look at it in a positive way and say that there are certain natural causes and effects by which the whole world is governed. And things like typhoons are results from changing weather conditions. And all of this is somehow in the plan of God. God has made certain natural laws, things function in a particular way, and it so happens that as part of this massive functioning, a disaster strikes one region. There's a certain degree of randomness in which God created the world as well, so that where a disaster may strike is a result of that random process, although God is in ultimate control of all random processes as well. So we may say that there's a mystery here that we cannot fully fathom, but we benefit from the lessons of this event.
We know that God doesn't necessarily take a hands-off approach, right? He does intervene in the world if he chooses to do so.
Yes, God steers and guides and modifies, and as one researcher put it, Alfred North Whitehead, God is the determiner of indeterminacies. So God responds to our prayers. God responds to the sins of the world. God responds to people doing good deeds. And out of a disaster like this, there are many good things that come out of it. First of all, we should be aware that it is not all disaster all of the way. For example, we were pleased to see videos online of a newborn baby. She was born in the midst of this chaos and on top of all of this rubble after the after the typhoon had struck. We find lessons of life. For example, in the story of a lieutenant colonel from the Air Force, he witnessed his men being swept away. He held on to a tree, and so that helped him survive for a while, but eventually he found himself blown into the sea. And there was a 10-year boy not too far from him, and he was trying to keep the boy's morale alive. The boy was starting to complain of tiredness, and he was afraid that if the boy became too tired, then he may stop resisting and eventually drown. But he kept speaking to the boy and keeping the boy's morale up, and eventually they were both safe. And he says in retrospect that, in fact, while we may think that he saved the boy, in fact, the boy saved him, because his sense of responsibility at that moment and his interest in keeping the boy pepped up actually kept him going. And had it not been for the boy, he too may have lost confidence and he might have been drowned.
So I guess these situations allow us to appreciate heroism and to appreciate the sense of human resilience. People want to survive.
True.
And they will do what they need to do to survive.
True. I like the way you put that. Out of a situation like this, there is much food for thought. When things are going the way they always go, we just get into the habit of doing things the way we always do them. And we don't stop to think about the big questions of life. What if everything that we have now is gone tomorrow? What would we do? We become so dependent on the material things of this world. What if all of these things suddenly are destroyed in a hurricane, a tornado, a cyclone, an earthquake, a tsunami, whatever it may be? So many different things could happen. We have no reason for thinking that we should live on this earth forever and that all of the material comforts that we enjoy will remain with us forever. Moreover, in a situation like this, what is more important is that as much as this is a disaster, I mean, we have some 3,600 people killed in this disaster. On the other hand, there is the massive outpouring of sympathy and charitable works. People are rushing to the regions from various charitable organizations, trying to channel aid to the people who are afflicted. Individuals are donating in the mosques, in the churches, the synagogues, Buddhist temples. People of no religion at all are donating through their reputable charities.
So do you think it's our responsibility then to reach out to people in this circumstance and try to help as much as we can?
Well, absolutely. An event like this brings out the charitable nature in us, and though that I mean, the nature is always there, we may not have done anything about it, but now we become accustomed to sharing some of our wealth with other people who are afflicted in a disaster like this. And this itself can be a good lesson for us and a benefit to the world in general. It is sad that some people are suffering to this great extent, but the good part of it is that, or the good side of it, the dark cloud behind this, this silver lining behind this dark cloud, is that much good is coming out as a result of and as a counter to this evil that has afflicted the world.
If you were, if you encountered somebody who survived this typhoon, what would you say to them?
I would say that God knows what He's doing, and God has an ultimate plan which is beyond all of us. We should put our faith in God, our trust in Him, our reliance, and hope for a reward with God which is going to make this suffering seem like it was a thing of bygone past, and that doesn't matter anymore, and that the reward is that comes as a result of this. It makes it all worthwhile in the end.
And what advice do you have for those of us who weren't affected by the typhoon directly?
Well, the rest of us should all be donating whatever we can to help the survivors of this typhoon. And our Canadian government is offering to match our donations dollar for dollar up until a certain date. So we should capitalize on that generosity of our government, and we ourselves should be generous. So I would encourage all of our viewers to go out there and donate online to whatever charities are channeling funds to that area, and try to relieve the sufferings of those people in whatever way you can.
Thank you for that, Brother Shabir.
You're welcome.
We'll take a break. When we return, the Islamic principles of governance.